I think that would be awesome.
Okay.
It's so like you're like super tall, but for me, this is like the perfect.
The perfect
I have the right angle. So.
No, I think that's perfect. Haley. I think I'll just talk about what we have done, and then I think you take over with stewardship.
Okay, so I'll start with like as simple as like keeping separate your tax receipts and your acknowledgement letters, and then some ideas for
I mean,
touches and upgrades.
engagement. I think that's perfect. 'Cause I don't really know what this is.
I don't either. The round
Listen, we'll just-
communicators roundtable.
I know. I know. We'll just do.
Okay, we're 1 minute late, so I'll start. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I'm Steve Smart. I'm the president of AFP Texas Plains chapter this year, and just want to really say thank you for coming out in the cold. We have some on Zoom. Thank you all too. And we have a couple of business items that we need to present. So the way we're going to do that real quick is we have some bylaws changes. They were sent out in November, but we did not vote on them. So we're going to resend the bylaws changes out probably in the next day or so after this meeting. You'll see that come from Haley. And when we do that, we'll also send out the slate for this year so that it can be approved. And so anybody that sees that, if you have any concerns or questions or you don't agree, let us know that information. And then we will take a vote at the next general membership meeting, which will be, you have the date on that meeting? Anybody have the date on that?
I don't in front of me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. March 23rd. So 24th. So please be looking for that. And looks like we're all here. And I want to introduce Keith. He is our education chair this year, and he is going to introduce our speaker.
And I will point out that that March 24th date is the week after our regular meeting date, because our regular meeting date's during spring break. So figured folks would maybe be out of pocket. So March 24th is our next meeting date. The program for that is going to be on Clifton Strengths Finders. I don't know if you're aware of the strengths assessment that's done by Gallup. So prior to that, you will be, if you're a member, you will receive a complimentary access to take the strengths assessment. Non-members it will be available to non-members as well. There will be a charge for non-members, but we'll be sending that out ahead of time. So just a heads up that will be coming sometime in the next few weeks. So I'm excited about our program today. We're hoping to do this in December, and then Ross's schedule changed a little bit. Ross Wilson was the Volunteer Fundraiser of the Year, recognized at National Philanthropy Day this year. Ross has, we appreciate Ross and his group for hosting us this morning. He, about the time he was going to be the speaker, announced his retirement as well. So he has retired from Texas Cattle Feeders as chairman and CEO, a position he had held since 2006, I believe. Has been with TCFA since 1985, so has some history with the organization. Every time I call him, he's headed into an 8 o'clock meeting for TCFA, and he's retired. So I don't, that's not exactly what I look forward to in retirement, but that's what he does. So
Darren and I don't sit still.
Obviously Ross has been very successful with Texas Cattle Feeders. The thing that we are excited to hear from him about today is his role as a volunteer fundraiser. Obviously, in my role at WT, we have benefited from that tremendously. Ross chaired the committee responsible for a $10 million campaign for the Ag Sciences Complex. Every time the legislature is in session, we hear Ross did this and Ross did that. And many of the appropriations that WT has benefited from are a result of the relationships that Ross has. And so he said, I'm not a fan of long introductions, so I will end the introduction and turn it over to Ross and help me welcome Ross Wilson.
Thank you, Keith.
I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee right quick. Everybody got what you need? One thing I did, Ross, wife, he and his wife Melody live in Canyon. They have 2 children and 5 grandchildren, I believe.
Most importantly, 5 grandkids.
And
That's right.
I don't know if she's the oldest or not, but his granddaughter just won a big deal at the San Antonio Livestock Show. She's won it twice and she can't compete anymore. So you might tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, so any success I've enjoyed through the years has been because of other people. So, and we'll talk about that, but now it's my grandkids. So I have 5 brilliant and 1 especially brilliant granddaughter who is, excuse my French, kicking butt and taking names. Yeah, Alex Wilson, you'll hear, keep an eye on her. She's I don't think Alex has decided what she wants to be when she grows up, but she could be many, many, many things, from a scientist to an attorney. I hope not. Hoping that are there attorneys in the room, and I have lots of attorney friends. So anyway, well, it's an honor to be with you, and I'm a little intimidated because you guys are the professionals. In many respects, I've just done through the years what many of you and some that aren't here today have suggested and then continually encouraged in appropriate ways. And so I'm humbled to be here, but I did figure out in visiting with Keith, he just needed a new place to meet, to get you guys to come to. And if he was going to be here, he thought he might ask me to make a few comments. So I'll be brief this morning.
Coffee and soft drinks. Like, hey,
That's right.
Can you give us a program?
He's a good horse trader. And that's part, as you guys know, what this is all about. So just quickly, and then maybe the conversation we can have will be the most productive part of this. I was blown away by the national award, actually by any of the public recognition that I've gotten through the years for doing what I have believed in that I would have done without any recognition. And I think some others are that way as well. I mean, I don't like public announcements. A pat on the back and an attaboy is adequate. A call, and this is all about, as you guys know, that old saying, and I was going to point to the President's Award up there in the corner. That's another recognition of what TCFA has done, not what Ross Wilson has done. And you were kind to mention my name relative to legislative efforts, but those are all team things, team efforts. So I am pretty skillful at herding cats. I've learned that through the years and juggling balls, but that old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a group. That is so true. And you guys know that. I mean, you live that every day in what you do for the causes and services and things that you support. So it's, it's about finding the passion. What is the passion? Maybe the passion for some is the public recognition, not in and of itself per se, but what it took to get there, the accomplishment that led to that. And I don't want to overstate my dislike for public recognition, because that is also can be advertisement motivation, really, for others that, hey, look what everybody else is doing. And I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, but there's a competition issue here as well. And those of you that are really skillful in finding out who is most motivated by competition, and I happen to be a competitive person. So this, as an example, this WT 125 initiative is a great competition among the different colleges, among the people like myself and others that I'm working with to raise money for WT for lots of different purposes. But in the end, it boils down to what is that person's passion. You're making me nervous standing up over there. Come in. What is that person's passion? And you know, what one, and Darren, I want to pick on you, but I will, because you embody passion. You have a cause and a purpose and a vision, and you share that passion with anyone that wants to buy in. And kids are so, at any age, are such a critical part of our future, whether it's Snack Pack or whether it's the students at WT or the students in our public school system or private school systems. So it's about finding and cultivating, and sometimes manipulating is not the word I'm looking for, because I know that's not what this is about, but it's actually helping that individual capitalize on what it is they're passionate about. So my entire career, nearly, I have raised funds in some form or fashion. It started with legislative appropriations at state and federal levels, our 3-state area of Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. You know, that's just, I love being around passionate, driven, focused people. I've been fortunate in my career, which I stepped away from as the CEO in January of this year. I've been fortunate to work for a lot of those people. So I feed off of that as well. And I know you guys know and recognize the role that plays. So as far as all those legislative accomplishments, that's teamwork. I mean, it's finding the members of the legislature, it's finding other colleagues in agriculture, it's finding supporters, because a lot of that has gone to West Texas A&M, some to College Station, and occasionally to Texas Tech in Lubbock. But it was a serving the mission of agriculture, serving the mission of our industry that I've been passionate for 37 years to work for, and I guess so passionate I can't seem to get away from it. So I keep my fingers in that as much as I can. And then as far as the private sector fundraising that I've done, I'll use WT, and I'll tell you a story and I hope all of you, and you probably do this, and I'll show my ignorance as far as professional fundraising in this next statement, and you probably do this on a regular basis. But from a volunteer's perspective, I hope all volunteers have the opportunity I have had to be a small part of what has happened at West Texas A&M and the College of Agriculture. And to see people come together around that cause and around that passion and create a wave of momentum that I don't think anyone ever anticipated. Some divine intervention definitely along the way. So the idea, and this isn't 100% accurate, but I don't think I'm exaggerating very much. The idea for the new College of Agriculture at West Texas A&M University started with the idea for a new meats lab. Because another passionate person here in the Texas Panhandle, Dr. Ty Lawrence, had built such an incredible meat science program that serves consumers and producers alike. And in the former dean, a couple of deans ago, Don Topliff at the time, and I had conversations about, we've got to build a new meats lab. One, the one that they have currently is horribly inadequate and outdated. It's an embarrassment. Two, if we don't, somebody's going to come along and steal Ty Lawrence. And it wouldn't be just a loss for WT, it'd be a loss for the region for many reasons and what Ty does. for our industry. So there was a little bit of selfishness there, obviously. But for for the students, the future students coming to Texas A&M. So the dean at that time, Dean Hawkins, as we called him, Dr. Hawkins, was in Ruidoso, New Mexico at the horse races. And he happened to be in a social setting with a guy named Stan Sigmund. Who of you know Stan Sigmund? Few of you know Stan Sigmund. Mr. WT in some ways. Stanley Schaefer is also Mr. WT. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So Dean was telling Stan, I'd heard of Stan. He was a business graduate in 1960, I believe, from WT. I think that's right. Worked his way through college as a stock boy for AT&T, et cetera, et cetera. And when Stan Sigmund retired from AT&T, he was president of AT&T Mobility. And so I Googled Stan. I wanted to learn a little bit more about him. And the first photos that popped up were Stan Sigmund on the stage with Steve Jobs. Stan Sigmund launched the iPhone platform with Steve Jobs. And Stan's deceased now, unfortunately. We lost an icon when Stan passed away. But just some of the stories to listen to Stan about his passion for WT, his passion for business, and passion for getting things done, and how he did that. So Dean was, and Doc Graham, any of you know Dr. Charles Graham? If you ever met him, you'll never forget him. He's incredibly colorful. But you'll see a sign on campus now that is the Charles W. Graham Texas A&M Systems Center. So Doc, in his own regard, is a world famous equine veterinarian. He raises cattle, feeds cattle, does lots and lots of things, raises lots of money for Texas A&M. And he took a liking, he's taken a liking to WT because WT reminded him of Texas A&M in the old days before Texas A&M College Station, and I've got a lot of friends in College Station, became too bureaucratic. So, in some respects, it's about staying lean and mean. So Dean is telling Stan and Doc about building a new meat lab, $15 million. We're going to go to the legislature, raise the money, get the money from private sector if we need to. And Stan Sigmund said to Dean, actually, I misspoke. Dean was head of the department. Don Topliff was still there because then Don called me after this meeting. Stan said to Dean, why are you just building a new meat lab? He said, why don't you build a new ag complex? And the rest is history. Stan Sigmund said, WT, and I used a reference. He said, WT needs to be the Cal Poly of the mid-plains. I said, hell, Stan, we're not in the mid-plains, we're in the southern plains. But you get the idea. And Don Topliff called me on a Saturday morning. That occurred Friday night. Don called the next morning and said, this is the conversation that just happened. And I said, what is it going to cost? He said, well, we estimate 50 million. And I said, we're in, let's go. So what started as a smaller vision morphed into a much, much larger vision. We were successful at the legislature with 40 million, I'm rounding. We raised 10 million. I emphasize we. Again, that was Ross herding cats and making sure that people were on conference calls and checking boxes. Tim helped us. Joe Bill Sherrod helped us. We continue those efforts today. But that started, don't hold me to these timelines. I think we passed that in the legislature at 15 and started raising money soon thereafter. And one of the first organizational meetings we had to start raising the private funds, Stanley Schaefer made the comment. He said, we need to move pretty quick, pretty fast. The momentum won't last long. Got to take advantage of this momentum that we have, which we agreed with. But the momentum has lasted longer than anyone, I think, ever imagined. So what started as a $15 million small dream has now morphed into over $100 million in facilities at WT, because after the Paul Engler gift became a huge part of this, just unbelievable generosity by Mr. Engler. And he continues to do that, not only for ag, but the College of Business. But then the veterinary extension research and outreach building, the Vero, the WT piece of the vet school at Texas A&M, which now has some healthy competition from Texas Tech Vet School. That's not a bad thing. Somebody asked me one time, said, my God, you're going to have 2 vet schools? What are you going to do? And I said, if we can't take 2 vet schools and a pharmacy school and a medical school and colleges of agriculture and make this the epicenter of food animal agriculture for the world, shame on us. If we can't figure out a way to connect those dots, shame on us. So, and then we talked the legislature into moving the Texas A&M Veterinary Medical Diagnostic Lab to campus from Amarillo. And I know there's a little bit of sour grapes when you move something out of one city to the other, but that mass of education and students and faculty and resources that is being created on campus is going to benefit the entire region. It's going to benefit the nation, actually. And the maybe, I shouldn't say the last, because maybe we'll continue to ride this way. There's another building coming. So the Board of Regents has approved the Texas A&M AgriLife and Research and Extension building that's over by the boulevard, on the boulevard next to the Veterans Hospital. You've driven past it probably, which is 50 years plus now and needs to be rebuilt. It needs to go to campus because it needs to be a part of this synergy that is being built at West Texas A&M. Now, so I hope from that story, well, again, you guys are the professionals. You work with people in lots of different walks of life and industries that do this. You're the people that actually help, because the countless conversations that Tim and Joe Bill and that our little executive committee that we had when we were raising that $10 million that Stanley Schaefer was also such a big part of. And then I can't forget looking at that recognition to TCFA from President Windler. Dr. O'Brien did a lot of good things for West Texas A&M and moved West Texas A&M forward in a lot of different ways, digitally and online curriculums. But I can't imagine, selfishly from agriculture, and I think business, I think all of the colleges would say the same thing about President Windler. I can't think of a better president, a more passionate, down to earth, let's just get the job done kind of guy than Walter Windler. So again, a lot of stars aligned. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time and wanted to be a part of it and was motivated by the vision and the goal, very motivated by the professionals that have in this room, several of you that have been involved, and then other volunteers like Stanley Schaefer. So, I mean, I think we can talk. I think I've covered most of what I wanted to discuss, but it's about the passion. It's about finding the passion and being relentless. There are times that people tell us no. They tell you no. They tell me no. And that's when I fall back on things I've learned from fundraising professionals is you just keep asking. You figure out another angle. You figure out, sometimes it's their family background that has people passionate about projects and causes. And I could give you examples of that. Sometimes it's professional. Sometimes it's just the individual. On my bucket list is Habitat for Humanity. One of these days I'll slow down from working when I actually do retire and become more involved with that program, because I think it's a great project. And I keep telling myself, Darren, I'm gonna come down and help with snack packs some more, but I haven't done a good job of that. I've been a little preoccupied on other things. So I'll be quiet. I didn't tell you anything that you don't already know. I hope I'm just an example of what your skill sets can be a huge part of accomplishing with volunteers, whether they're the people doing the asking or the people writing the checks. Sometimes it's both. Back to the issue of competition, there's a individual that's just recently written, again, because of Ty and other meat science faculty, has just recently written some big checks to endow some chairs. We're working on an endowed chair at WT. We're working on raising about $6 million for the research feedlot, along with other things at the university. So, but this individual, his name's Gordon Davis. Anybody know Gordon Davis? He's Tim knows Gordon. He's another unique individual, incredibly competitive, incredibly philanthropic. One of the more focus-driven individuals, was a PhD professor in meat science, but then after several years of doing that, created his own company, which was educational video curriculum for classrooms that started with agriculture, because that was his background, and then morphed into a lot of different curriculums. And CVA, now ICVA, was incredibly well positioned when the pandemic hit and everybody went online. And Gordon will tell you that timing and divine intervention and good luck are also components of success, as you guys know. And Gordon just recently sold his company for a few $100 million. And just recently gave, in addition to what he's done for Texas Tech, and for WT, there's a subject to this story. He just recently wrote the biggest check that Texas Tech has ever. That's where he was a professor of meat science, and the Gordon W. Davis Meat Science Building lab is named after Gordon. He just recently wrote the largest check ever written to Texas Tech, $44 million. And so I'm thinking we can get Gordon. We just need to set up some competition between Gordon and the right other donors. Maybe it's Paul Engler, maybe it's some other people I have on a list. Leslie and Dr. Pond and I and Dr. Keith have been talking about this a lot. And I think we can get Gordon to write some more checks to WT. And if he loves competition, so we'll set it up as competition. He loves to gamble. He loves to match people. So anyway, I'll be quiet. That's again, I hope I shared something that was useful. I know I didn't share any data or facts about fundraising that you guys don't already know, because you do it all the time. So I'll be quiet and we can just visit. So, or we can eat Keith's bagels and drink our coffee. So.
Ross, can you speak to the importance of relationships? You talked about Dean Hawkins and Stan Sigmund. You talked about there's a close relationship between Gordon Davis and Kevin Pond, who's at WT.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about the importance.
Well, in some respects, that's the most important thing, is to determine who knows, not only who knows who, but who's willing to do business, whether it's fundraising or asking people for money or writing the check themselves or some combination thereof. That's what in the end gets the job done. And I've worked with a number of you guys through the years that have amazed me on how you've connected the dots about people in the Panhandle. And so that comes with a lot of hard work. You know, it's that homework, it's that all that diligent behind the scenes, making notes and building portfolios, for lack of a better term, on donors, and then capitalizing and connecting those dots in a way. Gordon is a good example. Stan Sigmund is another example, and you guys in your own personal experience have your own examples of how that works. So yeah, great question. I can't believe I didn't spend a little more time on that. So I'm a fairly impatient person. So I have to remind myself to slow down and log that information, especially now that the brain synapses are firing a little more slowly. I don't remember as much as I used to. So absolutely. Yeah. Notebooks and of relations and connections and something that someone has given to. I mean, we've had numerous failures in our WT fundraising request. I just knew we were going to get some money, and this I was going to give all the credit to Leslie Annan, who couldn't be here today, as you guys know, the Burnett Foundation, the 4 Sixes Ranch, Ms. Marion. I just knew we could figure out a way to connect those dots, because it's huge, and we have not been able, and probably won't now with her passing, be able to get any of that. And there's other examples. So, you know, there's a lot of great success stories, but there's also failures. And I can't remember the saying, but you know, fail fast, because it's going to happen. Just fail fast, get it over with, learn from it, and go on. And we've all experienced that. So
Ross, I think for a lot of nonprofits, like, we would love to have volunteers, but in the day-to-day, and we don't do a good job of setting up a program and you know, so tell me, why has it worked for you? Why have you been so willing to volunteer? What is it about WT or someone else that has made it easy for you to volunteer for them?
Oh, that's a really good, well, it's as far as I have such a belief in what WT has been, because of my interaction through the years with all the legislative appropriations and watching that program grow and seeing the leadership transition that it's gone through. And then that catalyst, as I said, of the Meats Lab. So I've got a number of people at WT, the faculty that inspire me. Obviously, the core mission are the students, because they're the future of everything we do. Whether it's we obviously got to try to keep them in the Panhandle, but they're the future of our economy overall. They're the future of our industry with cattle, beef, agriculture as a whole. I am more than happy to help my colleagues in other parts of agriculture, because a rising tide lifts all boats. I want a lot of it to come directly to cattle feeding, because I'm selfish about that. But the bigger picture is what I just said. So I don't know that I'm answering your question very well. And Melody, my wife, would say that this is a weakness I have. I have an addiction when I get onto a project. And so you want to find people that, whatever it is about that project or that passion, that you know that you can partner with them, and it's multiple, it's not just one. You can partner with them, and they're thinking of it, and you can reach out to them at any time. Early, late. I do not mind texts or phone calls, and I'm the world's worst. I'm an early morning person. I'm the world's worst about texting people. In fact, there's a joke about that and conference calls. I probably have too many conference calls, but it's about keeping the ball moving forward and making progress, whether it's small steps or big steps when you hit one of those, those big home runs. And I was one of that group of people that were working on Mr. Engler. And some of my friends at WT would express concern that Paul had written a 20 some odd $1 million check to the University of Nebraska, but yet he experienced his business success in the Texas Panhandle, in this region. And they're like, well, why? I said, leave him alone. It's his alma mater. What do you think? That's okay. Just let him do it. Check that box and go back to him. And I will give Neil Terry and Dean Hawkins credit. And Neil was the mastermind behind putting together a program that could get it to the level, the Engler Foundation providing $88 million, $1 million a year in perpetuity, right? Which the attorneys will only define as like 90 years. I don't know. So there's just, did I answer your question?
I mean, I heard two things. I heard number one, there's been a lot of time. Your relationship with WT has developed in different ways.
Oh, long time.
And we're not.
I went to
patient.
WT. I'm a Red Raider. Actually, I'm a half bred. I'm a hybrid. So I graduated from high school in 1975. I started at WT. I was farming and ranching with my dad at the time, so I was commuting. And WT's, actually their ag program at that time was going down. Dean Smallwood had just been stolen away to California, and the WT ag program wasn't doing that great. They had one of the best professors I ever had was at WT. But I was going I'd go full-time, I'd go part-time. We were too big. I thought, I'll never finish if I don't get away. So I left. I did a dead week, did the Texas A&M, Texas Tech swing, and I could have ended up at either university. They're both quality universities, but it was the personal attention that I got at Texas Tech when I showed up on a Saturday that clicked with me. And the fact that I was still close enough to home, I could drive back and forth, help my dad and work on weekends. So anyway, I hope that answered your question. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are willing to give and willing to be involved. We just need to find out, what's that spark, what lights that fire, and how do you motivate it and cultivate it? Maybe somebody, well, I know they did. Somebody was cultivating me in this whole process at WT the story I just told you. They were probably good enough. I never figured it out. And I really don't care. I mean, in the end, it's all about the vision and the mission and whoever the benefactors are. So they want to use whatever little skill set I've got. I'm all in. So I figured out a long time ago I wasn't the smartest person in the room, but I can work with the best of them. And I like I said, my wife says, you're not passionate, you're addicted. And there's a fine line between that. So
There's no rehab for fundraising.
I think you're right. And that's a good thing, isn't it?
I do have a question, Ross. Many of us represent one-person shops.
Yes,
Small
and that's
nonprofits,
tough.
small developments, offices, and wear a lot of hats. And luckily, I'm on the consulting side, but I see a lot of that. We would all kill to have a Ross Wilson on our board. And in a lot of cases, some of the people that can make those $1 million ask, kind of feel like they graduated from being on small boards. And so, how do you inspire and encourage sort of this younger generation or next generation of leaders to boldly go ask for money? I always feel like starting with your board and getting that passion started
Right.
helps, but it's a little hard to do that competitive thing when, a lot of our board members are building their careers, or it's just scary. It's just flat out scary to go ask someone for cash.
It can be. I guess I got And Richard McDonald, who was the CEO, retired, and then I moved into that position. I mean, Richard was a brilliant, talented guy, CEO and mentor. Richard hated to ask people for money, hated. And they would have given out of respect to Richard for what he had done for the industry, but he just hated to ask people for money. I'm like, hey, dialing for dollars, let's go. And that's a little bit overstated. And I say that when I was doing a lot of political fundraising. I don't mean that philanthropically on what we've been talking about, but I do mean it when I'm talking about raising money for political candidates, for elected public servants, because they're in a unique position. They've got to decide who they're going to spend their time on. They've got everybody in the world asking them for something. So it was my responsibility to figure out, and it gets back to relations in a way. It was my responsibility to figure out how I could get them to do what I asked them to do, whether it was a piece of legislation on a policy issue or some help at a regulatory agency or appropriations for universities. I haven't answered your question yet because I wanted to think about it a little bit. One thing I would offer, and you touched on it in the youth, and this is one thing I really appreciate and respect about the College of Agriculture at WT is they're trying to instill that culture in their students and their graduates and trying to start them early. So if there is a particular college that impacts your nonprofit or projects that you're working on more than others, maybe reach out to them and try to figure out a way to get with those students, obviously the faculty, but the students as well. And it's this issue of getting people elected. Again, I spent a lot of time doing that, so I draw on that as examples. Is about you never, when you're passing a major piece of legislation, and we've done some good things over time, and it's never one individual. These major accomplishments are multiple people. One or a group of people, small people, will get the credit sometimes, but it's anything of significance never happens by one. If I hear people saying, I did this, I did that, thought goes through my mind is either you're not sharing the recognition with a lot of other people, or it really wasn't that significant of an accomplishment. It didn't move the needle that much. So I'll think about that some more. But I got to identify some other individuals. And as far as the fear of asking for money, man, I don't know. For some reason, I guess the first few times, I did it so much through the years. It became nearly second nature. It didn't bother me at all to be told no, because I knew it was going to come. But it does bother some people, and I appreciate that. And I've worked with those people, and so let's find the role that they're really good at. And some of them connect the dots strategically better than maybe I do. So let's draw on that strength, and I'll go ask for the money. And others will ask for the money. So.
You work with a lot of fundraising professionals. What are some things about those professionals that you've worked with that you really enjoyed, whether it was things that they did to be a useful part of the team, or just character traits that really help move things along?
Oh, I think it's some of the same character traits we've been talking about in individuals that do philanthropy. I tell you what I really admire is the training and education, and various people have had time to do various levels of that. But, and, you know, so much of that is online now. In fact, I even tried to go on the philanthropic website and see if I couldn't watch a few of the training, because I was just curious. And I'm not a member, so it wouldn't let me on. I should have asked. I should have called somebody and said, "Hey, how can I get?" Because I was just touche. Good for you. Yeah. The training and the professionalism, and one of the comments that comes to mind that Leslie has made to me is, you know, you may ask for $1 million and you only get 50,000, and you know that person, or 10,000 or 5,000. I'm working on we are working, because I failed. I thought I could get a big check out of a really wealthy individual for WT. Because I mean, this guy's a billionaire. If I say too much, you'll know who I'm talking about. Now I want you stealing my opportunity, WT's opportunity. But I failed. I have not been able to get that guy to write a check yet, but I haven't given up. And so Leslie and I and Kevin and others will brainstorm about this. While I found, again, connecting the dots of relationships, I have found other people. We have found other people that know this guy that are working this as well. So he'll write a check someday. It's just, I wish it'd be sooner than later, because we need to move forward with this research feedlot. So I may have to go out and figure out the competition thing between Paul Engler and Gordon Davis. That's another idea that's on the table. So, oh gosh, Tim, I was just trying to keeping people like myself focused and encouraged, you know, hey, they turned us down. Get them to write a check regardless of the level. Get them to write a check regardless of the level, because if they really truly do believe in the cause, they'll write more. They'll write more. And I mean, you guys, one of the things that intrigues me that I haven't spent a lot of time at, and I haven't done very good job at any of it. I mentioned the Burnett Foundation a minute ago, is the foundation. So I mean, they're required. They have to write checks of a certain level every year. So finding someone within that foundation leadership, or somebody that knows those individuals that can, put in a good word or make a contact. You never know where those might go. There's lots of foundations that do a lot of philanthropic things. It's about getting your passion in front of them and convincing them that that's something they ought to invest in.
I'm curious about your involvement with stewarding these donors afterward. Are you just the asker, or do you go back and thank and report and get involved in those?
That's a great question, because that's incredibly important. That long term, that is maybe the most important thing, because the last thing that any of us that are raising money want to do is have a donor, large or especially small or especially large, that over time believes that their gift is not being used as they wanted it to be, as was their understanding at the time. And we've all probably seen instances of that. So I would just challenge all of us to, and some of these folks have passed, and leadership at nonprofits and universities change. But if we're going to maintain our credibility, we also have to be a part of making sure that that gift, that the vision, the goal of that person was honored. And we've all seen where that might not necessarily always be the case. So being the impatient person that I am, I'm usually moving on to other things. And so I have to be reminded. And usually it's not directly. I think it is directly. It was intended to be for me not to figure out that it was direct. So indirectly, I've been encouraged to either do that or participate by fundraising professionals to circle back and touch those bases. So
Setting up that next gift as well.
absolutely.
Part of maintaining that relationship and
I sound like a broken record using WT as an example, but there's a perfect example of a individual that has given gifts that they felt like weren't necessarily handled in the way that they thought they would be. That's why written documents are very important because my memory is horrible at times. Nobody remembers all those details. So you got to have something to refer back to. That person I know will write probably several checks when we fix that issue. And to Dr. Wendler's credit, he has taken on 2 or 3 of those type of projects where stewardship was not handled as it should have been. And I'm not saying it wasn't intentional. It just, those things happen. I mean, we're human. But I respect and admire Dr. Wendler for saying, I will fix those issues. There's a small number of them. There are not that many. I guess you're always going to have some of that. But, Paul Engler is a perfect example of making sure that whether it was the initial gift or subsequent gifts that Paul will make to the university to make sure that we're honoring Paul's vision and legacy. So.
Ross and I add just a bit to that. I think oftentimes the volunteers are in the position of knowing when the donor might not be happy with something, and that relationship between the volunteer and the organization is very important too. Sometimes because I've been in many of your shoes where you're the only person in your shop, and I know that WT has much more resources for fundraising than many of you do, but the larger the organization gets, sometimes the more difficult it can be to follow through on all those things.
That's true.
So I think the volunteer can be very critical. They will hear much more quickly than the development officer will. When somebody's not happy about something. So that's another important piece.
And we talked about why do people do what they do, and I mentioned family, and a perfect example of that is the Peels and the Schaefers at WT. And it's been that way. They do individual things, they do things together, but that has now gone to the next level under the WT 125 project. And just to watch that, I'm fortunate to be involved in that process. And I mentioned competition earlier. It motivates me to keep pushing, because selfishly for the College of Agriculture, I want them to be the number one fundraiser when all the dust settles on WT 125. And actually, we hope it's WT 250. But that's a need. If you haven't seen, I'm sure those videos are available, that if you haven't seen that conversation with the Peel Schaefer family, including the next generation, you should watch that. It's really inspiring, and it'll give you some ideas on, reaching out to people and families. And it doesn't always work. There's a family in New Mexico that has connections to WT, and we've failed to get them to write a check thus far, but we'll keep working on them. So they'll come around. They'll see the light eventually.
Ross, I think that's a great example, because WT has done a really good job lately of putting out a lot of different videos of different types of donors. And it's almost where no matter what kind of person you are, if you go online and you watch those, you're going to see kind of yourself in one of those.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's brilliant because it's not just the Shavers and the Peels. It's different people. And so kudos for that, because it's a great way to tell the story. But remember to touch as many of those targets as you can with the stories that you're telling.
And then at times, people will steal your biggest. You'll be told now, okay, John Doe has now been elevated to the president's level or to Todd's level. So let's just chill for a while. I'm like, really? Okay, we'll chill. But that happens. Hey, that's okay. That's the greater good for the overall mission. But it creates a little bit of a setback and a challenge. So
That means you're doing good. If the president is stealing your target.
well, yeah, I'm not going to take credit for having identified some of those targets, but it is good. And the president's always got a larger vision than I have. So I hope he's successful. So
He's real good at stealing prospects.
Yes, I know. Yeah, but we've been raising money for these other projects that I mentioned from our feed yard. Remember, our members, our officers and board, and Leslie and I can't remember who's working with Leslie on this, on one of our members. So it wasn't like we're going to steal this member, but would it be okay if we went and solicited this member? I said, I had to, it didn't offend me at first. I'm like, you don't think I can raise money from my member? But I got over it pretty quickly. I said, knock yourself out. If you can get more money out of that individual than by presenting maybe a different angle, different approach, bigger vision, connecting some family dots or employee dots, which the staff recognized that I really hadn't slowed down because I was dealing with the owner. And they're like, no, we think the staff wants to be involved in philanthropy, which is a great idea. So I'm anxious it'll turn out well. So anyway, so they stole my one of my potential donors, but that's okay. It'll be better in the end.
I wanted to mention a couple of things. The videos you brought up, the one with the Peels and the Shakers
Yes.
and the Bangs and that. And I don't remember if it was Stanley that said it, but there's a comment made in that video that is the thing that I think we miss sometimes. I know I do, is asking, because they made that comment and I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was to the effect of when they finally asked.
That's a very good point.
And so it reiterates that people want you to ask. It's all about the relationship, but you still have to say something.
You have to make the ask.
Yeah. And those folks are great people,
And see, that's where you guys really come in, because there's a lot of different ways to do that. And you can do it the right way or you can do it the wrong way. And so it's good to have insights as to, okay, based on what we know about this potential donor, let's make the ask this way. And I, in most instances, I have found that to be better than what was going through my mind. So.
And the other is I really just want to say thank you to you, and which would go over to all the other volunteers. I know most of us in this room have been a volunteer fundraising for someone else and doing those things. But as a professional in the field, we can't do it without the volunteers. You guys have a different connection, your passion, a lot of people want to hear from you, not from us in that sense. And so being able to bring that together and steward that relationship is really important also. And it is difficult. We get busy and.
Oh, yeah.
And miss the things that sometimes we should really be doing. And people with passion that are gonna keep doing it anyway, help remind me of that. And so, I just want to say thank you for what you do as a volunteer.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a blessing to me. Really has. I've met a lot of great people, got to support a number of good causes. There's other causes down the road to work on and support. I actually keep asking myself, will there ever come a time that I pivot away from WT and focus on something else? But WT is smart enough to keep putting projects in front of us to their credit. So.
I'll say, Ross, I think, obviously alluded to passion, but you recognize the importance of teamwork and synergy. And I think it's easy, particularly if you're a one-man shop, to think, I'm the only one doing this. And volunteers have always energized me, but I think it's very important that you get as much input as you can, because I think I've been at WT forever, and I think I know everybody, and the alums ought to be the ones participating. This guy's not an alum. I mean, he is a higher. He's
I'm an alum from both universities. Yeah.
But sometimes the most logical, what you think is the most logical person to do something isn't necessary.
So here's a good, that you're spot on. And you commented about the ask. So I'll just be honest with you guys. I have offended some of my friends at Texas Tech. I mean, the diploma says Texas Tech. I am incredibly proud of it. They've given me several awards through the years. And a few of them have come out and asked, or they don't ask, but they're like, well, you traitor. and you know what some of that is about, not all of it, because I've told you what a lot of it's about. They never ask. They never asked to get it. It even started in the legislature. WT and Texas A&M and the system was front and center and engaged. Texas Tech depended on their lobbyists. They didn't. Now, I was a lobbyist at the time, but I was an industry lobbyist. Their lobbyists felt like we've got all those connections that we need. We don't need anybody helping us get this appropriation. So they never asked. And that relationship and career, or the relationship and operationally just continue to build over the years. And I have a lot of love for Texas Tech. I think they suck at sportsmanship. I can say that. I'm a Red Raider. I don't know why that culture exists, but anyway, I watched Tech beat Baylor last night and was just, impressed with Mark. Thank you. Now there's a great story. So about motivation and a career path to get to where he is today. So anyway, so don't forget to ask. And it doesn't have to be, sometimes the volunteer, usually I have found that that I want a peer with me. I'm more successful if I've got a peer with me of their financial stature, whether there's competition or not.
Anybody have any more questions? We're running right on our time frame here. Well, Ross, thank you very much. I mean, I could sit this
I've probably learned more than you guys have today. You've reminded me about some things that I probably need to focus a little more on. Thank you for what you do. Seriously. You guys are at the heart. I mean, philanthropy is at the heart of so many things that happen good for society, but so many people get busy in their everyday world and they just don't slow down. So it's about, get people to slow down and think about what really makes the world go around. Okay, thanks very much. You guys can use this room anytime for future meetings. There's lots of bagels.
I know, I live over on the east side, so it's